What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, the two people that give you your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. I am here with Dave Martin Swagger, as always. Dave, how you doing, man?
Hey man, how's it going, you Ichabod Crane motherfucker?
Yeah, Secession, having just an amazing season so far, and maybe we'll check in with it next week or in the following weeks when we have some more time. Because Dave, this episode of Nowstalgia is going to be pretty packed.
Hitters.
We're gonna be talking some music, some TV, some movies, and then Emmy predictions at the end. But before we jump into any of that, hit that subscribe button if you're watching or listening on YouTube, and go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to find all the ways to catch the podcast. Dave, it's been quite a while since we talked some Game of Thrones. Why don't we start there this week? It was announced that the second prequel show for HBO will be coming out in the near future. It was announced that it will be following the Targaryen storyline, and specifically following the book of Blood and Fire.
Fire and Blood.
Fire and Blood, sorry. And it's interesting because it starts about 300 years before the Game of Thrones show on HBO, with the Targaryen conquest, and then kind of follows their lineage. I have a feeling we'll be talking about some of the actors that played the Targaryens in Game of Thrones as we wrap up the show. But how are you feeling about this prequel and what it's going to be detailing?
Right. Yeah. So this is the second prequel pilot that's been ordered. That's coming off of the Age of Heroes Long Night pilot that they already shot with Naomi Watts at the forefront. They just did the pilot. They haven't actually greenlit that show yet. But that one obviously set thousands of years in the past, right? The time of Bran the Builder and all that stuff. Now this one, as you said, the Targaryen, Targaryen story starting with the Aegon's conquest. That's 300 years before the show, so that's in turn a large swath of TV history time to pick from, but also a lot closer to the show that 40 million people are familiar with. And depending on how they frame this, I mean, if you wanted, you could do seasons from the start with Aegon's conquest and advance up a few years. And the rumor is that it would start with the Dance with Dragons, which is about 150 years before Robert's Rebellion, which kicks off the Game of Thrones story everyone knows. And that's that's just a rumor, but that's honestly one of the events that people have had at the top of the list. I think when we first talked about the prospect of all those pilots that were ordered a year and a half ago or so, that was, one of the top choices for everyone. And the question, of course, was the Dance with Dragons. This is when there's lots of dragons alive still, and they're fighting against each other because it's a Targaryen civil war, right? And that sounds expensive, and we already know HBO is up against it when their final season of Game of Thrones cost $15 million an episode, and they couldn't show you much of a direwolf because they already had to spend all the money on the dragons, and that was only 3 dragons, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to handle when there's like 15? A lot, and these are also like 80, 100-year-old dragons that are a lot bigger than Drogon was, who was only like 5 or whatever. So really exciting premise. It'd definitely be a go for it concept, but I actually think it's kind of smart because Targaryens, Starks, Hightowers, all Martells, all the houses and cities and names people know would be in the show if that's when it took place. And I think that could really rope people back in because we know the story is compelling and exciting and kind of has all the backstabbing palace intrigue and also the crazy set pieces that we come to love from Game of Thrones itself. So I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious if they can do it at the scale that it needs to be done at to be good.
Yeah, I have to imagine that if they're picking this and they're already anticipating that, so I guess it's going to be about the sustainability of that scale. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt they're going to come out guns blazing and try to make this a success right off the bat. But how they can sustain that when that budget's going to get eaten up pretty quickly, and I think that can pretty much also guarantee that we're not going to be getting a lot of big named actors for this. Like you have Naomi Watts headlining the other prequel, but I imagine they'll probably go similar to the way Game of Thrones had maybe like one when it started off. Sean Bean, I guess, would probably be the one that you would say, and then you kind of fill it out with quality actors but maybe don't have that name recognition, which I think is fine. And I have a lot of faith in HBO to find actors who will do a suitable job. So I'm here for it. As you said, picking the Targaryens or the Starks or any house like that people are invested in is definitely the way to go to kind of rejuvenate that interest. I think the more obscure you go with Thrones, the more you're going to alienate those fans that aren't aware of these stories on a deeper basis.
Yeah, and in case you didn't know, this is obviously Benioff and Weiss are not involved with this. This is Ryan Condal, who's known for Colony, and then the Age of Heroes Long Night show is with Jane Goldman. So new blood for HBO, but I mean, I would assume if they do go through with these shows, take them to order, you have to figure Game of Thrones is in the title, right?
Yeah.
Just from a marketing standpoint, right?
Game of Thrones, Fire and Blood already has a good ring to it. Why would you change that? Another show that I think has a good ring to it, an HBO property, The Deuce, coming back for its trace and final season. So David Simon, director of The Wire, Show Me a Hero, really awesome TV director. We've talked about The Deuce and how it probably is one of the most unappreciated great shows that's out there right now. It's never really in the discussion for best show of the year. We're going to be talking Emmys and it doesn't get the Emmy nominations, but overall just a really quality show. And Simon builds out this world of New York City and Times Square and the rise of pornography out of the slums of the sex trade and things like that in Times Square in New York City at the time. And now season 3 takes a jump forward from the late 70s into the end of 1984 going into 1985. And a lot has changed. And a lot of it not so much for the better, it seems. Cocaine is pretty much everywhere.
Bumps everywhere.
Is just like hanging over everybody's heads. And once again, the landscape of the sex trade field is changing as home video is starting to shape the way that pornography is shot. So there's a lot going on. How did you feel about the premiere, which aired last Monday?
Yeah, I liked it a lot, and as jumping the show up 8 years, crazily enough, I think was really wise because, as you said, it advances the world that's already so, richly drawn by Simon and Pelicanos, and taking that up a notch because at the end of season 2, the specter of AIDS and the coming of home video was present in the show and on the mind of some characters, but wasn't really, in the consciousness for everyone. And as you said, just bringing it up and now having AIDS being part of it. And, the show has truly left the sex trade behind in favor of porn, and porn has already taken its next phase on the show, right? It was really smart just to change the dynamic and see how these really finely drawn characters that we've come to know in this ensemble have reacted as they've, aged and grown in this evolving time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the pimp characters are basically gone. I think the ones that came to know the best, Method Man and CC, of course, died last season, and Gary Carr in particular played CC, was really great. I really liked his performance, so it does suck that he's not around anymore. But I think there's a lot of opportunity just for new faces, and we get Corey Stoll, who's one of the bigger names to come in since the show started, right? Obviously, Franco's and Gyllenhaal are the biggest faces, but interesting potential for him for sure. But yeah, 85, man. They go to CES in the premiere. It's kind of cool, Yeah. So, I've always just liked how Simon Staple, he just really knows how to show the seedy nature of whatever world he's drawing, whether it's Iraq in Generation Kill or New Orleans, in Treme. Like, it doesn't really matter what he's telling, but he just really knows how to, I think, have a larger message. And there's been a lot of talk about, is Simon reflecting on his own career because he doesn't make blockbuster TV that gets awarded and is that popular, as you said. And we know that these days, blockbuster is the only thing that really sells. Is he making a comment on himself through the way that porn can no longer be auteurist, circa 1985? Interesting thought. We'll see if that continues, but I think it's an interesting observation. But I'm really excited for where the show starts you off and for all the characters to go from here. I think it's a great place to start.
The idea of Simon having a once upon a time in Hollywood type commentary on his own career is really, really fascinating. Something I hadn't really thought about. But yeah, it's especially I think using Candy as the avatar for himself in the show. I think that makes a lot of sense. And Candy, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, I mean, she's involved in this, but her role has definitely changed, and probably the most over the last 2 seasons. She's gone from being a hooker on the street to being a respected pornography, specifically feminist pornography filmmaker. Although that seems to be also changing as this episode, she's talked to by Harvey about how that's just not making money at this point, and they have to kind of shift away. And I think she's the character I feel most interested to see where she goes, especially when you introduce a guy like Corey Stoll, an actor like Corey Stoll, to kind of be her, I don't know, I'm guessing her new beau of some sort in this season, and how that's going to...
Seems likely.
Yeah, how that's going to impact her and shift. I could also see that kind of being a way of showing how the industry, so to speak, stops or hinders people from having relationships, because I could imagine that she might hide this for a while or something like that from him. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. What other characters are you most interested in going into this season or storylines?
Yeah, well, I mean, they make it quite clear that Abby and Vince are continuing to move apart in the relationship. It's just an open relationship at this point, right? I can't imagine that ends well. Also, Lori gets out of rehab and is doing lines by the end of the episode. Another thing that, even though she's escaped CC and seems to be pretty successful as a porn actress, still has her issues. So even though the locales have changed, the times have changed, there's a lot of bad stuff to come. You figure, and of course, shit, Paul, and being so close to the AIDS world, it's we know that's not going to get any better. And it was actually interesting to hear Rudy Pipolo talk about how AIDS has also hurt his business, right? So, and then Bobby, is Bobby going to get AIDS? Is Luke Kirby going to get AIDS? Who knows? But yeah, Simon is never one to really do anything cheaply or for shock, So, I mean, shit, last season, CC dies kind of unremarkably, right? He just kind of gets fucking murdered by Bobby and Franco, and it was kind of unspectacular. So I can't imagine anything's going to be too melodramatic when it comes to the AIDS stuff, but really can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, you mentioned this before. How do you feel about the the lack of black characters now that they've moved away from like the pimps and the hookers dynamic and more just towards the pornography scene?
Yeah, it's noticeable for sure. Obviously, because it's Simon. Simon's someone who's really good at handling race. He's done it before, so I don't think I was really gonna hold it against him. But depending on how this season goes, maybe it's an unforced error. But having the show advance in time and in line with history, was a good idea, I think. So let's see if we get any other characters. But yeah, it's noticeable at the start.
For sure. You pretty much only have Chris, played by Lawrence Gilliard Jr., and I'm assuming Larry Brown has to come back. Played, I think, really well by Egbenga Ekenagbe.
Right. Yeah, he's good.
And he was kind of moving into being like a porn star in and of his own right. So potentially will come across him or follow him somewhat too. But yeah, I do feel like there's a bit of a hole in terms of those dynamics, and you really, I think, come to, and this is something Simon does really well. You really come to, I think, feel like you build relationships with these characters who you never usually would, and you really start to like them. Even Cece, who you said was played so brilliantly. He was a really terrible person, and you really end up like feeling pretty endeared to him, and then he's just gone. Just killed. And Simon just does such a great job with this world building. It's really, really awesome. I'm really interested to see how they incorporate like the home video with the pornography now. They were showing like the short cuts to in the pornography with music behind it and things like that. And I think there can be some really funny stuff done with that, especially the images of the people who are making those sort of films.
Sure.
So interested to see how that goes. Any last thoughts on the Deuce before we wrap up?
Interesting. Simon already shot his next show this past year. The Philip Roth miniseries, The Plot Against America. Definitely not what I expected him to tackle next, but it sounds cool. It's a good book.
Yeah, Simon's awesome. I'm on board for whatever he does. Also a Baltimore native, like the guy we're talking about next. JPEGMAFIA. All My Heroes Are Cornballs. So this is only his third album, but he's been around for a little bit, right?
Yeah, a lot of tapes, a lot of EPs.
Yeah. And this album, All My Heroes Are Cornballs, it followed up to last year's Veteran, which I think got some buzz around it. What was your take on Veteran? I don't remember reviewing it.
We didn't review it. It came out in January. It's really good, though. It's a lot like this new album, I think, with just less singing. And kind of this new album, All My Heroes Are Cornballs, is kind of a continuation of Veteran in terms of Peggy's self-aware, dark humor, confrontational attitude, and delivery, and all that. It's kind of peak Peggy, I think. And we've kind of mentioned him in passing because he was on the Flume EP this year. He was on Denzel Curry's Taboo last year. He was on Injury Reserve earlier in the year. But this is the first project of his we've actually talked about in earnest. But I'm happy we are, because I do think he's a really exciting and unique voice in hip hop that's definitely beats to his own drum.
And this is quite an album. And I mean that in a good way. I found this to be a really interesting listen, and for not super aware other than the tracks I had heard JPEGMAFIA on, like you already mentioned. I was really pleasantly surprised that it seems like he put a lot of thought into this album, and even though some of it, I don't know if I totally get everything that's going on in here. There's a lot of like choppiness, a lot of cuts to like random sounds and just things kind of put in there, like distorted voices, or I think there's even some like messages for like voicemails played at certain points. I think this album flows together really well, and it almost made it hard for me to pick a favorite song that I liked, because the way I listened to it. Yeah, I just listened to it as one whole piece, and I found it to be really, really engaging pretty much throughout. So give me your general thoughts about this album, then we'll kind of dive deeper into some of the tracks maybe.
Yeah, so I mentioned the singing. The singing stood out to me because he hasn't really done it before. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was actually done pretty well. The first single, Jesus Forgive Me, I'm a Thought. I think he sings on that, he croons a little bit, and I think it's done well. And this whole album is completely self-produced by him. I mean, I think there's some session work from other musicians, but it's really all Peggy. And it's a really, I don't know, you kind of said it already, atmospheric sound. And it's kind of like distorted production at times, but it's funny because I think the whole framing of his album is a lot like his other projects too, because I mean, you can look at even from the face value, the song titles a lot of times are ridiculous, right? Beta male strategies, thought tactics, post-verified lifestyle, and my favorite, JPEGMAFIA type beat, which is hilarious if you know anything about how people make beats on YouTube these days.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it continues. Like his first album is called Black Ben Carson. On Veteran, one of the great songs is called I Cannot Fucking Wait Till Morrissey Dies. One of his best singles is called I Might Vote for Donald Trump. You know, he's really in your face guy who goes at everyone. He takes his shots at everyone. He's ultimately a progressive dude. And he's actually had the alt-right go after him in the past. But he also will go after the libtards, you know, he'll go after oversensitive people and lame white people. He'll go after anyone.
Soy boys.
Of course. And, well, I don't think all of his observations, not all of them are as deep as he might present them to be. A lot of times they're just kind of half-finished thoughts, you know. And not all of his jokes land either. I think just because the confidence is so winning from Peggy. Yeah. And we know it's genuine because he's been doing this for his whole career. You know, I think his second EP was called Dark Skin Manson. You know, like he's been trying to be controversial the whole time, but he's not like trying to be a grifter or anything. Yeah. So I really enjoy it, even if, as you said, it's hard. I think in the first listen, it was hard to pick out individual moments on this. Be honest, I really stood out to me like the singing just because it was new. But not a whole lot of fat from what I can remember.
Yeah, no, I didn't think there's a lot of fat on it. I think it just is so unique in terms of the production on this that it's hard, I think, to just be like, oh, this one song is good because a song is going in one direction and then halfway through he'll just like either be like screaming all of a sudden or he'll be like having these guitars just kind of come like flaring up and you're like, I don't really know what to make of this, but I know I'm enjoying it or at least engaged by it. A couple of the tracks that did stand out to me, however, Basic Bitch Tear Gas.
Yes.
I thought was pretty good and
completely unexpected.
Yeah, doing this like chopped and screwed cover of No Scrubs, just fucking awesome. PTSD, I thought actually was pretty well done, and I thought the use of his voice in that was really interesting. How it kind of starts off this falsetto at the beginning, and then kind of switches up to this like screaming in a sense to talk about. And he's talking about some serious shit on this too, which I give him a lot of credit for. Talking about gun violence and kind of the larger trauma it's created for the country. I thought was excellent. What song stood out to you?
I really like Beta Male Strategies.
Yeah.
Thought Tactics. Basic Bitch Tear Gas. Again, just because that's like the fourth to last song on the album. It just comes so out of nowhere, man.
Yep.
I'm like waiting for him to like flip the song or anything, but no, it's just like a 90-second cover at the beginning of No Scrubs. Really funny. Let's see. Jesus Forgive Me, I Have a Thought. Again, that's
the first
because
song.
That's a lot different than a lot of his past songs, to be honest, and I still think it works. So, yeah, really, really, really fun album. But again, unlike really anything else, it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely give it a listen. JPEGMAFIA surprising us with an excellent album, one of probably the most unique ones of the year. Charli XCX. Dave, were you surprised at this? Because I'm pretty sure you were a huge Charli XCX stan back in 2017 with Pop 2. Am I right?
Nailed it. Yes. Yeah. So Charli XCX got on the scene early, right? Like people have known about Charli XCX for a long time. We know Boom Clap, and we know the Iconopop song I Love It, and of course you know Fancy by Iggy Azalea, of which Charli is on the hook. This is the part everyone sings and repeats, right?
So 2012 to 2013 was crazy.
Right. She's been in the mainstream pop landscape for some time. Yet I never really thought much of her music until 2017 happened, like you said. Number One Angel and Pop 2, two projects, two tapes from 2017, beginning and the end. And that's when I think it really came out that people were like, wait a minute, Charli has been writing all these mainstream traditional pop songs for everyone for a while and doing some of it on her own, as I said. But she's actually really into like this alt future pop and this like really non-traditional pop music, despite being someone who's existing and successful within the mainstream pop space. That was just really exciting to me. And Charli, third album, is a lot like Pop 2. But I think there's actually some songs that are going to do well on the radio, which is interesting. I think she's taken mainstream pop to the future today with this. Whereas with Pop 2 in 2017, it sounded like really out there. It doesn't sound as out there now. I think like pop has changed a little bit, and people like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande have taken some of the sonic ideas Charli's just kind of messed around with on her own and brought that more to the mainstream. And now Charli can actually do that in the mainstream now, do the type of pop she's always liked. So yes, I am quite a big fan, and I like this album a lot.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty good album. It's interesting because I think she's a really strong songwriter and singer on her own, and she does a lot of collaboration. And I think I actually could have used a little bit less on this because I think that some of the collaborations didn't seem to fit completely for me. But I also think that the songs that shown the brightest were ones where she had some really interesting collaborations. Like, I really enjoyed the one where she had Big Freedia, Cupcake, Big Frida, Cupcake, and I forgot what the last one on the track was, but Shake It. I think that one is a really strong song and just so bouncy and fun. I could see that really moving up Billboard charts pretty quickly. But songs like the song with Lizzo, I just didn't think fit as well in this album. And I think moving forward, I'd like to see Charli XCX stand on her own a little bit more, especially because you see someone like, oh man, I don't know. We've had a lot of releases from really strong female artists this year: Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, Camila Cabello earlier in the year, Lana Del Rey. And I think that she could be. I think she can reach that level. I just think that she needs to hone her own craft and maybe not rely on the collaboration as much. Just a thought, because it's so interesting, some of the stuff she does, like that song Shake It. Her voice is like so modified. It's almost like this like floaty, bubbly type sound, and then she just lets everybody else take over. And I'm like,
right,
I love the features on that, they kill it, but I want to hear more of like that production and whatever she's trying to go for with that. So I want to hear more of that from her. So I think that she's just reaching the level of her talent.
Yeah, well, I think to that point, towards the end of the album, February 2017 with Clairo and Yeji, that I think is exactly what you're talking about. Where that's a song that just sounds really out there. And then if follow that up, the last track of the album, 2099, with Troye Sivan, the sequels track to 1999. 1999 is this banger bop pop song that came out last year, a song I love. But that's, definitely a traditional pop song. And then 2099 is anything but, And as you mentioned with that Lizzo song, which was, I think, probably the second oldest track on the sound that came out earlier in this year, that's just a traditional pop track that, you're right, it doesn't really, I guess, serve a sonic purpose on the record, which is interesting because it's a rework lyrically of track 10 on Pop 2. It's basically the same song, just much more normal produced production and vocal inflection and stuff. But I think overall, this is like interesting because with the Lizzo track, with some of the overlaps on some of the features here, you have Charli almost hedging a little bit on that futuristic stuff. Yet I think for the most part still works. I thought Haim on Warm really fit into what she's going for. I think Gone with Christine the Queen's perhaps the best song on the album.
I agree.
Songwriting wise, that song is just superb. And overall, I think even, songs that might be a little unremarkable, like White Mercedes or Silver Cross, still don't really have any flaws. I think they're well-made tracks. So, for the most part, I really liked every track on here. And I think I really hope this can help push Charli more forward in terms of truly being who she wants to be on her own. Because as I've said, she used to be the person at the songwriting camps, 5-6 years ago. writing for other people. And heck, shit, she's one of the co-writers on Senorita, the Camila Shawn Mendes smash.
Yeah.
So she's still going to do that, and that works for her. But, she's really starting, I think, to popularize, as I said, the weirder shit that she really likes to do. Because she's really more of a dance pop person than a person who's going to open up for Taylor Swift like she did on the Reputation tour. So overall, really successful project in my opinion. I really hope some of these songs just hit just for her sake, because again, I think she deserves to be a name act on her own. So let's hope some of that works.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think she's a very interesting artist and someone who is definitely creating her own lane within the pop sphere. Why don't we move on now to some movies, Dave? I'm going to kind of give you the floor because, like most Americans, I just couldn't bring myself to go see the Goldfinch this weekend. And I think the pictures behind you, the faces on these people's, Ansel Elgort, and who's next to him there?
I don't know his name.
Yeah, it kind of says it all. I think that's how a lot of people are looking at the Goldfinch, with kind of just shock at how this went from being a potential Oscar-worthy movie, or a movie that looked like it was going to get a lot of Oscar buzz, to being maybe one of the biggest flops in the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
How do we get there?
It's an adaptation of a best-selling novel, The Goldfinch, that literally
Pulitzer
won
Prize winning, I think.
Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2014. Yeah. And John Crowley directed this, who last did Brooklyn, which had 3 Oscar nominations.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd think that everyone's making a power play here for some prestige. And I haven't read The Goldfinch, obviously, but from what I've gathered, this movie is kind of really faithful as an adaptation. It's a long movie, 2.5 hours. I think it's an 800-page book almost, but it makes a few mistakes, which I'll get into. But as you said, this movie is not just any bomb. It's literally the 6th worst opening weekend for a movie that opened in at least 2,500 theaters. $2.6 million opening weekend, and the budget was $40 million because this takes place in Amsterdam and New York City and Vegas, and they shot in Albuquerque instead of Vegas, but still there's multiple shoots, so expensive movie. And bad time for WB, because Blinded by the Light also didn't do well. The Kitchen didn't do well. Shaft didn't do well. Godzilla underperformed. It too do well though for them, and Joker will do well. But overall, WB bad run right now. But yeah, so people have really been dumping on the movie since it premiered at TIFF, and I think it's easy to say the movie's trash, the movie stinks, blah 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 blah. But I mean, to be fair to it, I think it's important to actually explain why. And what really stood out to me is the editing. The book is more or less very linear from what I've gathered, yet the movie isn't. We flash back. We start with Ansel Elgort playing the adult version of the character, Lee character, in Amsterdam, and we flash back and we have big chunks of his childhood, and then there's memory sequences revolving around the inciting incident in the story, which is a bombing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, which kills Ansel's mom. And it just felt unintentionally unnecessarily all over the place. And the stuff with the kids, the young actors, is really, really long. Like Ansel is, sold as the lead of this movie and all the marketing, right, and the trailers. We don't get a lot of Ansel until over halfway through, to be honest. And he's hardly a problem. I know a lot of people are talking about, is Ansel Elgort actually a movie star, blah, blah, blah. He's fine in the role. I don't know the character from the page, but he was fine in it. But the story just, honestly, there's no pulse to it, man. It's just really lifeless. And the whole point, I'm not going to spoil it, but the whole point about his mom and the meaning of the Goldfinch painting, it just doesn't really seem to land what kind of points they're trying to get across. And the whole twist, which I won't spoil, once it happens, you're just like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. And the guy you're seeing on my screen, the adult version, Finn Wolfhard's character, Boris. Finn Wolfhard is bad as Boris, young Boris. He's a really bad Russian accent. He was, I think, just miscast a little bit because he's playing this guy that kind of exposes Ansel Elgort's young character, to drugs and crime and stuff, and just tough. Characters that did work. I think Nicole Kidman was pretty good as the his surrogate mom briefly after the bombing. Luke Wilson plays his deadbeat dad. So he's all right. More interesting was Luke Wilson's girlfriend, played by Sarah Paulson, playing really off type for what we expect from Sarah Paulson. She's kind of this rhymy trophy girlfriend, kind of seedy woman. Really good though. She really chewed on it. So I like Sarah Paulson a lot in this role. And I think she did as much as she could. Jeffrey Wright talks, I think, really deeply and profoundly without actually saying much in the movie.
Sounds like his part on Westworld.
Incredibly similar, actually. Good call. Yeah, it's just it's engaging kind of the whole time, and I think if the editing was tighter, we trimmed this movie a little bit. It's kind of got a weird rich ensemble of various characters. Most of them are not famous actors, but you kind of forget, like you meet the adult characters of people you knew as kids, and you have to like guess in your head, oh, that's that kid, like because you don't actually know at first when you're watching. It's a little confusing. But yeah, I think overall the themes about love and meaning and holding on to things that keep you going just did not land for me in film form. So I think the movie just a bit of a slog overall, and tough beat for WB. What I actually find most interesting about this movie is that this was a co-production by Warner Brothers and Amazon, really the first of its kind, where Amazon fronted about, I think, 20-30% of the initial production budget, in exchange for having the exclusive film rights on streaming. Naturally, Warner Brothers would normally have put this movie on HBO, their own streaming service. So kind of an interesting thing where a mid-budget movie, $40 million, could be financed by having people split the cost around, right, and selling off the streaming. Now, obviously, this movie was not a success. So will this arrangement work? You have to figure. I mean, this movie's been in the work for several years. Obviously, I mean, John Crowley made Brooklyn in 2015. It's been a while, right? Will a deal like this come up again? Tough, remains to be seen. I think now Warner Brothers with HBO Max probably wouldn't do this again, but Lionsgate, Paramount, Focus, some of those smaller distributors, maybe they would partner with a Netflix or a Amazon. I'm curious to see if this kind of arrangement can perhaps keep the middle tier movie going, as we've talked about in recent weeks. But the Goldfinch, I saw at 3 p.m. on a Sunday, on opening weekend, and I was one of 3 people there. It was just
not great.
Was not interested in the film. Ansel Elgort, we'll see him next year in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Interesting. But yeah, Goldfinch, major L for all parties.
Yeah, tough. Sounds like Sarah Paulson is really, and of course the Queen from God, I can't think of her. Nicole Kidman. I'm sorry, flew out my head. Sounds like they're the only two that kind of leave this unscathed in a sense. If any of them got out unscathed. Yeah. Well, let me move on to, I think, a movie we both enjoyed and I was able to see, Hustlers. Lorena Scafaria. Dave, I mean, this is a movie that I feel like came out of nowhere and has just like totally captured people's attention. And obviously it's hard to have a movie with J-Lo and all the stars in this that there are, and to say it kind of came out of nowhere. But if you looked back, 2 months ago, and you said the Goldfinch and Hustlers is dropping on the same weekend, I think almost everybody would have said, oh, the Goldfinch, I know that movie. The Hustlers, right. Not nearly as well known. And this movie's killing it at the box office, from what I understand.
Yeah, $33.2 million opening weekend. That's it. A record for XTX, the biggest opening in its 5-year history. And J-Lo, record opening weekend for her whole career, passing Monster-in-Law from 2005. And it's funny, you say it come out of nowhere, but it really did. I mean, I knew about this movie earlier in the year when the casting got announced. J-Lo had been attached to this for a while, but like Constance and Cardi and Lizzo and Usher, all that news, that didn't come out until a few, 7-8 months ago. And then I was really surprised when, oh wait, that movie's coming out this year? Kind of crazy. And then you realize $20 million budget, 29-day shoot, really condensed, really to scale film. And as you said, when you're managing, I think 3 in-demand talents, one of which is your co-lead in J-Lo, a lot of hoops to juggle through. And Scafaria has said that it was definitely a challenging production. She would not recommend trying to do it this way again. But yeah, I was also surprised it was going at TIFF. I was like, Hustlers at TIFF? That's, people do awards campaigns kicking off at TIFF. Is this smart? And then out of TIFF, you're like, oh wait, this movie rules. Now I get it. And once you see it, you're like, yeah, this does rule. And I read the story it's based on in New York Magazine, The Hustlers It Scores. It's a long read. And in a sense, I almost wish I didn't read it because it's the plot of the real life story, and they changed the character names, but the plot, for the most part, is verbatim in the film. And like actual lines about stuff, like giving blowjobs for 300, and like there's verbatim quotes from the story that are in the script.
Yeah.
It don't stand out from a script perspective, but I was like, oh shit. I actually know the beats of this movie more than I expected because I read the story ahead of time. Yeah. But yeah, out of nowhere, and huge success. Really exciting.
Yeah, when I saw the producers of this being Adam McKay and Will Ferrell, the movie made a lot more sense to me. And the movie, I mean, it's well told. It's not confusing at all. But the way it was edited and the way that it looked reminded me a lot of The Big Short in a lot of ways. Touching obviously on the financial crisis as a theme, but some of the cuts, showing these ancillary characters to explain a larger concept that's out in the world that's then impacting the storyline or the characters. You think about J-Lo walking through the club and talking about the levels of Wall Street guys that there are, as an example of that.
Yeah.
Where it's like the little fish on the totem pole, the middle guy, and then like the top CEOs, and then they go to them dancing in the private room, and it's it reminded me a lot of The Big Short crossed with like Goodfellas, crossed with Magic Mike, obviously, for the similarity in like the dancing and things like that. But this movie was just a goddamn delight. And it really kicks off with Jennifer Lopez's appearance in the movie with her onstage performance.
Jesus Christ, man.
How is she 50?
50 years old, doing a elaborate pole dancing striptease to Fiona Apple's Criminal. Super impressive from a physical perspective, given her age, and also really, I think, compelling scene in the film for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and basically from there, it's like a rocket, and you see Ramona, played by Jennifer Lopez, befriending Destiny, Constance Wu, and it's really fun to see their relationship build. And I think the only knock I might have on the film at all is I didn't find Constance Wu's performance totally engaging throughout. But Jennifer Lopez is throwing 100 miles per hour on the black the entire movie. And it's just so delightful. And you mentioned the big cast. I feel like everybody gets a moment in there, whether it's Lizzo like running in to say Usher's in the club, and then the entire Usher's. Yeah, the entire Usher scene is just absurd, and the musical cues, the way that that they build moments up, or that they background moments using music and other things. It's just really, really impressive. Why don't we talk about maybe some of the performances, some of the moments that really stood out to you most from this?
Yeah, I think you're right on with the music cues, man. Starting right off with J-Lo's opening number, as we said, but really tasteful selection of late aughts songs for this. And I think they all make sense. Obviously, doing Love in the Club by Usher for the Usher cameo, awesome. But doing Scott Walker's Next, when they first started drugging people, and like the line when he's like feels like jelly as the guy's like fucking like losing his consciousness. That was great. And then more obvious stuff like Britney Spears, Gimme More, and Big Sean's Dance Ass, and some Janet Jackson in this as well. The cues are good song choices, but also dropped in the film really well. And shout out getting all these songs cleared, because I'm sure a lot of these were challenging. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Everyone really has a good moment. And yeah, I think Constance, Destiny, for the most part, is kind of down the middle, right?
Yeah.
At least the characterization in this is. And I think in real life that probably isn't the case. But in real life, her name was Rosalind. But Constance kind of moves the plot and like plays off J-Lo. But Keke Palmer as Mercedes, hilarious. I've always been a big fan of Keke Palmer. Like, she was really great in Scream Queens, which I really liked. Short-lived show on Fox. And now she's a meme right now with the not knowing who Dick Cheney video with Vanity Fair. It's going around right now, hilarious. But she's good. Lily Reinhart, who I hadn't really heard of before. She's from Riverdale. She's a girl who pukes throughout the whole movie.
She's great.
She was really good too. And yeah, man, I think then Cardi and Lizzo, stunt casting at the end of the day. But I mean, if you're gonna have Cardi for a few scenes, it's nice that one of them is teaching Constance how to, give lap dances.
Yeah,
of Cardi's time, in my opinion.
And Cardi B, she's such a fun personality, but I feel like she actually like steals a lot of scenes that she's in. And like you said, she's in like maybe like 4 or 5 of them throughout. But she's so magnetic on the screen. It's just like I wanted more of her for sure. And it actually feels a little noticeable to me when she just kind of disappears. Obviously, they only had her for like a day on set or something like that. But
yeah, it's noticeable. Like once we're like into the heist section, then you just kind of realize, oh wait, yeah, we're not going to see Cardi ever again. We've advanced several years. It's over.
Yep.
How darn.
Yeah. You know what scene I really, really loved was when things kind of go wrong with I forget the blonde haired character's name who pukes a lot. When she has the guy who's like passed out, jumped off the balcony and thought he could like fly or whatever. And then Constance kind of has to figure that whole scene out. And then she can have that almost like Goodfellas like tracking shot in a sense where she's like running through her house and runs across the street to get her kid from the babysitter, and then goes to the school and walks her in. Everybody's looking at her with her blood covered like hoochie outfit, or however you want to put it, going out outfit. But it's I just found that scene so engaging, and I felt like it encapsulated everything the movie was, which is this really funny and engaging look at these people who are doing these really awful things, but you're rooting for, because you kind of get this more human side that, Ramona is, even though she's kind of like seen as this boss in a sense, and especially in the interview moments, is really built up by Destiny as this like always in control, like kind of putting it on Ramona. She's also this sweet woman who's like trying to help the people around her, maybe not always in the most well-guided ways, but she does seem to care about the people in her life a lot, and how Destiny is this really broken and lonely person who's just looking to feel connected and a part of something since her mom left. I think they do a really good job of building all that out. Any other scenes that stood out to you?
They manage a lot Destiny's struggles with being a mom, right? And plays that off of Ramona's seemingly successful run at being a mom and having people work for her and being able to manage that more. But I think like the lazy stuff is like, oh, this movie, it's a movie about women working for themselves, and it's all pro women and all this. But that's all true. But the movie, because it's a kind of framed against the specter of the financial crisis, and it's framed about working people, or the system doesn't really support them, right? I think it's just the whole like sentiment of the plot is much smarter than you expect going in when you hear it's just a movie about strippers and go-go dancers that rob their clients, right? Like the movie actually, I think, says a lot, which you didn't expect going in. So I think there's really a lot to glean from the movie, and even if you don't want to think too hard about it, as we said before, J-Lo is just kind of crushing it the whole time, and it's her best work since at least Out of Sight or Selena, right? Which is
for sure
20 years ago. So, and part of that's J-Lo's fault. She hasn't picked a lot of great projects in her film career, but it's really exciting. I know there's a lot of buzz about her being nominated for an Oscar for this. I think it's a little early to say if that's for certain, but she's at least in the mix, which, I mean, good for her.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, Hustlers, man. Kind of wild. This is adult drama success that we always talk about being so rare these days. And just a great time. Also, shout out Julia Stiles, man. Hollywood has not known what to do there since the Bourne movies, and it's a small role, but I'm just happy to see she's back out there again, you know?
Yeah, it was funny. I literally turned to my girlfriend and I was like, Julia Stiles? Like, didn't even expect that at all. And the way that it cuts to the interviews, it's just like very catch you off guard. Hustlers, great movie. Go see it. Why don't we talk about some Emmy predictions now to wrap up? Where do you want to start with these, Dave? You want to start small to big?
Sure. That sounds fitting.
All right. Do you want to do the actors? Do you want to do any of the writing categories? Anything you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, start with the actors. You know, we talked about the nominations when they came out back in July 16th. So check that video out. We kind of talk more about the actors and shows that were snubbed before, and anything that surprised us about the overall crop. So we don't want to rehash that. So just check that video out if you're curious about more top level stuff. This time we'll just kind of think who will win, who should win for the Emmys coming this Sunday. But yeah, let's start the actors.
Yeah, and why don't we work our way through each category? So we'll start with limited series, just to kind of touch on those. So supporting actor in a limited series, a pretty good category. There's 6 people nominated. Probably the highlights. We don't need to go through everybody. You can check that out on your own. I definitely have Stellan Skarsgård and Michael K. Williams up there, just for the names in general. But Skarsgård on Chernobyl, I think, is awesome. And Michael K. Williams, I haven't seen When They See Us, but pretty much everything he's in, he kills it. And I could see him getting some love here, especially because I don't have When They See Us winning in a lot of other categories. So I think this could be a place where they get one for the Netflix series. Who do you got?
It's funny. I'm seeing a lot of love on all the predictor sites for Ben Whishaw for A Very English Scandal on Prime. Show I haven't seen. Ben Whishaw is good. So I'll throw it out there. Yeah, Stellan Skarsgård, Paul Dano from Escape of Dannemora. Those are movie actors on TV. More understated roles, though. So I wonder where they lean here. I don't know. This is kind of one that I kind of have a hard time picking one, because again, George Clooney was not picked for Catch-22, who I expected to be here. So this is one I think it's hard to get a read on, but I'll just defer to the predictors and go with Ben Whishaw. But I think Skarsgård would be my choice because he's the only one of these I've actually seen.
Yeah, Skarsgård was really, really good in Chernobyl, as were most of the performances. Supporting actress in limited series, for me. I'm looking at Patricia Clarkson from Sharp Objects. I think she takes this home pretty easily, in my opinion. Margaret Qualley for Fosse Verdon. I couldn't really see her winning this. Any others stand out to you?
No, I think it's Clarkson. I mean, Patricia Arquette will come up again. She could, I guess, win twice for the act. But yeah, I think this is pretty clearly Patricia Clarkson for Sharp Objects to me. Perhaps the only win for Sharp Objects from last year. Yeah, I think it's a pretty easy call.
All right, well, I'm going to move into the lead actors then. Lead actor in a limited series or movie. Who do you got?
This is an interesting one as well. I think it's going to be the guy from When They See Us, Jarrell Jerome. He plays...
I can see that.
he plays his character as both a young person and an adult, the only one in the cast to do that. I think When They See Us, Netflix is putting basically everything into that show for it. So he would be my choice. I think his only real competition for this is probably Mahershala for True Detective. Sam Rockwell, I don't know if they want to give an award out to playing a problematic man, Bob Fosse. So I don't know if the optics are good for that. Jared Harris, category. Chernobyl, good, but understated performance. So stacked one for sure. But yeah, I'll go with Jerome.
Yeah, I have Jared Harris up there too, just because I have a feeling Chernobyl is either gonna hit big or go down without anything coming its way. But it really just captured the conversation, as did When They See Us, which we haven't seen. So I could definitely see Jerome. Mahershala, he's just beloved by all these award. I mean, just beloved in general, but especially by the award academy. So I don't think you can count him out. He actually probably would be my pick. What about lead actress in limited series? Who do you got at the top?
So Patricia Arquette for Escaping Dannemora. She already won the Globe, the SAG Award, and the Critics' Choice Award for this role because obviously it's been a while since the show came out, right at the beginning of the eligibility period. And she's beat Amy Adams and Sharp Objects already in these categories, but she hasn't gone head to head with Michelle Williams from Fosse yet. So I think it's truly a 2-horse race for them. And I would not be surprised if Michelle Williams sneaks in there. What I just said about Bob Fosse, the opposite thinking, stands for Gwen Verdon, someone who was not as appreciated as she deserved to be in her time, right? And again, Arquette is a bit of old news for Escaping Dannemora, given the way the calendar worked. But it's between those two.
You can just hear Michelle Williams giving the speech now, right? That this is for Gwen Verdon, who never really got her shine when she was alive. You can just hear it. So I could see that happening. I'd love to see Amy Adams win this, but I mean, someone that is definitely beloved by different award academies. But I don't think it's going to happen. Going with Michelle Williams. And finally, who do you got for the limited series? A category where I think we've seen half of them, I believe.
Yep. 3 of 5. 3 of 5. I think it's When They See Us. It's that or Chernobyl are the only two that have a shot. But it feels like Netflix this will be their first win in a series award for them, and they really want it.
And didn't they win comedy last year?
What's that?
Didn't they win comedy last year with the one with Michael Douglas? Didn't that win comedy?
Not the major award.
Oh, gotcha.
That may be
the Comiskey method. I'm pretty sure won last year.
Oh, did it? Shit. Well,
let me just double back on that.
Well, and HBO, they're focused on Thrones, right? With their main show. So Chernobyl, I think Chernobyl, again, as you said, really captured a moment. It was a kind of a surprise hit. It was shocking how big it actually got. Yet When They See Us, I think really also kind of speaks to the time in a way, unlike anything else in this category, and like most things nominated. So I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, actually, I think it was an acting category that won. I think Michael Douglas won for best lead actor. So that was my bad on that. But yeah, I could see it being When They See Us. Like you said, it's between that and Chernobyl. Obviously, because I've seen it, I'd like Chernobyl to win. But When They See Us, probably going to pull it out. Now we'll move on to comedy next. Then we'll wrap up with the drama. Starting back down at the bottom again. Supporting actor in a comedy series. Man, there is really only one person I want to win this category. But I think
Anthony Garrigan.
Yeah, that was it. But I think if they win, it's going to say a lot about how the night's going to go for the following comedy categories. And that's, I want Tony Hale to pull it out for Veep.
He's won twice before?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, twice.
Playing Gary. And he is just fantastic. This is a category where Tony Shalhoub has won in the past.
Yep.
Really stacked, just top to bottom. Henry Winkler, Stephen Root, Alan Arkin, a lot of people in this are famous.
Winkler won last year.
I'm really hoping that Tony Hale pulls it out, but I think if he does, it's gonna signal a big night for Veep potentially, which makes me a little bit concerned for some of my other favorites moving forward that we'll be talking about. Where are you at with this category, though?
I think it's going to be Winkler again. That means like the reward repeats. Yeah, and again, Tony Hale is also a repeat. So interesting idea. Maybe they move on from Barry after this year. Barry season 2 is better than season 1, so I don't know where the calculus is there. But yeah, I think it's a Hale or Winkler with Shalhoub kind of on the outside, given that he has won this recently. But ultimately, kind of tough to call.
Yeah, it's a tough category for sure. Supporting actress, also a pretty tough category for a comedy series. Shout out to Betty Gilpin getting that nomination for Glow. I don't see her
season 2
pulling this out. I have Alex Borstein, who
for Maisel.
Yeah, I think
she's been a bit of an awards juggernaut.
Yeah, and I see it continuing. I believe she won last year as well, right?
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would really pull for Anna Chlumsky in Veep, who's been nominated before but has never won. Olivia Colman has got a lot of love recently, but she is great on Fleabag. But yeah, I think it's Borstein, probably pretty easily.
Pretty easily, in my opinion. Who do you got for lead actor in a comedy series? This is the category right here.
Bill Hader.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. He won last year. And I guess Ted Danson is on the outside looking in with Good Place. But yeah, I think it's Hader. HBO.
Yeah, I think so too. Ted Danson has the second best odds to win in this category. But I think Hader walks with this pretty easily. What about lead actress, though?
Yeah. So is Julia Louis-Dreyfus suddenly going to go 6 for 7 with her role as Selena Meyer? I don't think so. She's going to win.
This is probably the toughest category of the night for me.
I agree.
I mean, not seeing Dead to Me, and only seeing a couple episodes of Schitt's Creek. Sorry. Pretty much everyone else I've seen, I think, is deserving of the award. I mean, Rachel Brosnahan won it last year. JLD, like you said, pretty much wins it every year. She plays Selena and very deserving. Natasha Lyonne, incredible. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, probably the hottest in terms of most success and just critical acclaim right now in the business. I think any of them could take it home. Right. I would love to see Phoebe Waller-Bridge get it, because I would love to see Fleabag also get the best comedy. But
yeah, so Leone and Waller-Bridge are both also nominated for writing for their shows. So I think one of them will win in that category. I would love Leone to win. I think she's probably the best peer choice of this. And I mean, Julia has been nominated 25 times and has 11 wins, right? He doesn't need this award. Yet, I mean, we're just kind of wrapping up the Hall of Fame, plaque right now. So,
yeah.
And Veep is going off the air. So
the hard thing is, and I think a lot of times the Emmys fall into this, is they do give repeat winners, but they also do that, I think, with the idea like, oh, well, when this show ends, well, the other show will finally get its due or something like that. And that, some shows fall victim to that. Like Mad Men never really got the critical acclaim it should have.
Jon Hamm never won.
Yeah, which is just bizarre. But
neither did Steve Carell for The Office.
The thing is, Fleabag is such a cultural phenomenon this year, and pretty much everybody's saying it's the best thing they've seen this year. You have to watch it. I saw a tweet from Ryan Reynolds saying it's so good he wishes he had never seen it.
Yeah,
actually.
Amazing.
Which I find hysterical. And I think because there's not going to be more Fleabag, I think that it has a shot to actually dethrone Veep here. So
right.
I can see Phoebe Waller-Bridge pulling this out.
And that's what was so exciting about being nominated. It was like the Emmys got it right the second time and really, gave the show some love. And I mean, how many did it get? 3 or 4, if I remember right. But writing the show, and then Paula Bridge. Anyway, because the belief is that the show will never return, why does it need to go down as one of those shows that should have won? Why can't it just win? No one's going to think any differently about Veep or JLD. Depending on if they win these last set, So,
and for all the reasons we're mentioning, this is why I think it's going to pull out Best Comedy Series. You have a really stacked category. Barry, Fleabag, The Good Place. I mean, I love all these shows, except for Schitt's Creek. I'm not as big of a fan of, but I mean, I feel like it would be a travesty if a show that's garnering this much acclaim, this much love, so unique, really propelling a new star into the comedy world, goes unawarded. So what we've talked about is pretty much everybody except for Russian Doll getting some love from the other categories, but I think Fleabag takes it home. What do you think?
I don't know, man. On the one hand, Maisel won 8 times for season 1, including for Best Comedy. I feel like if Maisel did win for season 2, everyone would be like, that's not even a shot against the show, but everyone would be like, what the fuck? Like, it's Veep or Fleabag this year, right? And again, just because Russian Doll doesn't have a chance. Russian Doll is amazing.
And you're not even mentioning Barry, which we love.
Right. And but Veep as a show, I mean, the Veep has won like 17 times.
Yeah.
And this is the final season. And HBO, as a voting block, usually sticks together. So I think Veep wins, but Fleabag should win, obviously. I want Fleabag to get something. I don't think it'll be this. I think it's just going to be the writing award ultimately. But
I feel like that'd be
damn
travesty. But it'll be really interesting to watch. All right, wrapping it up with the drama. What's your prediction for supporting actor in a drama series?
Look at the screen if you're on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. I think Peter Dinklage will win his 4th Best Supporting Actor in the role of Tyrion Lannister. Normally, you would think when 3 people from the same show are all nominated in the same category, they will pick each other off and split votes. But the problem with that is, who else do you actually realistically see winning in his place? Jonathan Banks has never won before, by tons of nominations. Giancarlo Esposito, same thing. And I don't think Nikolai Coster-Waldau is going to get there. Certainly not Alfie Allen. So I think it's just Dinkle again.
Yeah, I think Dinklage takes this one home as well. Supporting actress also has 4 Game of Thrones nominations, including Gwendolyn Christie, who nominated herself. So shout out to her. She's fucking awesome. Who do you got winning this one?
So this is the case. Well, now there's 4 Thrones people. I think they will all split each other up. Because again, I mean, how do you really pick? They all had their standout moments.
I know where you're going with this. My head is in the same place. Fiona Shaw, baby.
Well, that's who my personal choice is. All the odds people think it's Julia Garner from Ozark, the breakout of the show.
Fiona Shaw.
I would pick Fiona Shaw, of course, for Killing Eve, but look out for Julia Garner. That's all I'm
saying. Moving forward to lead actor in a drama series, I'm not going Jason Bateman here. I'm not going Sterling K. Brown. I'm going with a bit of a surprise one, though. Bob Odenkirk.
I love that.
Saul's fucking awesome. I'm pretty much just picking what I want to see, but it'll probably be Kit Harington, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Sterling's won twice before. Billy Porter, I know people would love to see that.
Yeah. Nah, I'm going Bob Odenkirk. I think Saul finally gets some love. It's
right.
It deserves it, and Odenkirk, especially the way that he leaves that last season, where you see him slipping Jimmy again. It's just so masterfully done, and the show relies pretty much wholly on his performance. Shay, or sorry, what's her name? Rhea Seehorn.
So it was not nominated. Still
bullshit. Yeah. Who are you picking for this?
I'm having a hard time with this one, to be honest. I mean, Odenkirk would be my choice. I saw a lot of people saying Bateman would win. He has been nominated a lot the past few years for Ozark, but
all this Ozark.
You think Billy Porter could win? Kind of
I could.
Choice.
I could see it. I would be pumped.
Pitt winning. I really don't. And Sterling's won twice before. I feel like This Is Us has kind of waned as a critical show. Not that has mattered in the past for the Emmys. Look no further than Modern Family. Yeah, I'll go Billy Porter. I just don't have a good read on this one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a tough category for sure. Lead actress in a drama series. I guess. Just looking here. Does anyone pop off the list at you?
Yeah, it should be Jodie Comer,
mm-hmm.
but I think it'll be Sandra Oh instead. Sandra Oh wasn't even nominated last year, or no, she didn't win last year, and Comer wasn't even nominated. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a appreciation for all Sandra Oh has done for TV, not just Killing Eve season 2, which was not our favorite season of the show. Just put it that way.
Yeah,
but also like I don't see Viola coming back to win for this show at this point. Nor do I see Emilia Clarke pulling through either. So I think it's just you pick between the Killing Eve actresses.
You're not going Robin Wright?
Yeah, Robin Wright. I think Netflix has spent like a $1 campaigning for the last season of House of Cards.
President Underwood, Madame Underwood. Actually, I'm going to say Emilia Clarke. Was it intriguing?
No, it sounded really dumb.
I'm actually going to say Emilia Clarke. She carries a lot of the season. Her turn,
one of her better seasons.
Yeah, for sure. And her turn is a huge moment. And not only, I think, for the show, but just TV in general. It's going to be a moment people are going to remember and talk about. Now, how they talk about the execution leading up to that moment might be different, but I think the performance in general is good. So I'm going to say Emilia Clarke gets the win here, which would actually be really interesting because then you'd be talking drama series, Game of Thrones get 3 of 4 if my predictions are correct. So probably not going to happen, but throwing the guesses out there. And when we wrap up, drama series, what's taking it home, Dave?
Game of Thrones is winning. Like, case closed. The final season of Game of Thrones. It's the record for the most nominated season of a show in Emmy's history. Your thoughts on this season as a whole, critically, honoring Game of Thrones one last time for grabbing 45 million people each week, unlike anything else, deserves love. So
for sure.
And I think the only show you could really make a case for perhaps would be Succession season 1, but I don't expect Succession to win much else leading up to this because it's kind of under-nominated. So it just seems unrealistic. Therefore, Thrones in a walk, honestly.
Yeah, man. I just hear the Succession music playing as it cuts to a stunned DB Benioff and Weiss in the crowd. Just can't believe it. And Greg the Egg, that Ichabod Crane motherfucker, holding up the Emmy for Best Drama.
Shout out Nick Braun.
That's my these are my bold predictions, I guess, for the Emmys. I'm really excited to watch because I feel like there's a lot here that we like. So we'll see.
Game of
Thrones probably will win, but
it was nominated 32 times this year. 47 previous wins. 161 total nominations. None of the other shows going up against have more than 9 nominations this year. So by transitive property, it's the overwhelming favorite for Best Drama Series. Yeah. That's what we say about comedy. Comedy is much closer. But yeah, I'm excited to watch. I think there's a lot of good stuff. And, with Veep and Thrones at the end of the line, and last year it was Americans at this point, there's just room for new blood. And we've kind of already seen that with shows like Succession and Pose getting recognized. I think we're in Bodyguard. I think we're going to get even more of that. So it's kind of like we're kind of in between eras in a certain sense,
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting though, because as we're in between eras, there's so much on the horizon that you could see being nominated next year.
Yeah.
The Morning Show, The Mandalorian, Watchmen. These sort of shows we're so highly anticipating. This time next year, we'll probably also be talking about nominations for Rami Malek and Mr. Robot in its final season. Going to be really fun to see how the streaming wars and the money being poured into these streaming services affects these award nominations moving forward. So a lot of fun stuff to be talking about and looking forward to. And Dave, what should the people be looking forward to next week?
Yeah, so next week we have the Emmys winning. We'll go over the recap. We'll see what we get right, what we get wrong, what surprised us. And top of the list, of course, is Ad Astra from James Gray, starring Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. It was premiered at Venice, and everyone says it rules, and I hoped it would. So excited for that. Brittany Howard of Alabama Shakes has her solo album, Jamie, coming out. Talk about that. And Downton Abbey movie comes out. That's a big deal for a lot of people. And Rambo 5. Only one good Rambo movie, but hey, there's another one coming out. Stallone, he's back with Creed. Why not?
So for all of our analysis on that and more, follow Nowstalgia Pod on Twitter. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to find all the ways to get the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating review on iTunes. And lastly, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Just take the fucking money. Peace out.